blacked out. And I made got great laughter on television just by turning the pages and say, you can see how much they gave us when we appealed and so forth. Well, I also went after those 23 CIA UFO documents that the NSA had found. I mean, this is by their definition, UFO documents. After 35 months, they released 9. These were press abstracts of Eastern European newspaper articles about UFOs. It took 35 months to decide they could release what the Russians had the day they were published. That doesn't sound right, does it? I mean, their own 14 UFO documents they withheld. If you wish to appeal this decision, call this number and ask for Chris. No last name. Well, you're not going to appeal, are you? I said, of course I'm going to appeal. You don't expect to get anything, do you? I said, well, if I don't, Phil Class will say I'm too lazy to appeal. So I appealed. 2 more years, in other words, 5 years after the original request, I got portions of 4. On 2 of those, you can read 8 words. And my favorite piece of paper says, deny in toto. They couldn't find 8 words that they could release. Now the years go by and President Clinton signed a new thing making it tougher to keep old stuff classified. They came out with a new version, only 20% blacked out. And they claimed that they released all 156 UFO documents, 160 minus 4, which didn't belong there. The only trouble is they had a little note, whiteout was used. When I called them to ask for that new set of documents, she was looking at something that Bill Clayson said about me. He never says their sources and methods with all those blacked out documents. So now they use whiteout. So you will now have the privilege of seeing some of this. Let's look at the next slide. Oh, this is one of the CIA documents. They're neater. Important words like, what's that, some kind of date. I can't read it from here. Conference and doc reference and dates and stuff like that. That's very informative. Next one I think is another one.
Might be the last one.
Yeah, info location, USSR, hey. Info date, title. I mean, now don't tell me they're not covering anything up, damn it. Look at that. People say off the black, and I say stupid. Hey, Xerox at first, there's nothing. So, I think that's the last one, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, we'll advance that one so we can, don't shame all this thing. Turn the lights, let me see. Yeah, I don't know, one of those 2. Yeah, okay. What we have here, in other words, is a clear and definite indication that the planet's being visited, the government's covering up, knows a lot about it, we're being lied to, and our media aren't, and scientific community aren't doing the job. Those are a lot of indictments, but is there any hope for the future? What's it going to take to break the story? Well, something happened this year that made it. On January 1st, the Chicago Tribune carried an article on front page above the fold. It occurred at O'Hare Airport, not a trivial place, on November 7th. And the reporter had guts enough to go after on freedom of information, the FAA, which said we think, he heard that they had heard something, and oh yes, when they started looking, they found they had. A dozen employees of United Airlines saw this round thing sitting above O'Hare, beneath the cloud layer, just sat there for a bit. They were talking on their radios. They're moving airplanes around. These weren't pilots flying airplanes in. And this thing took off right up and bore in the clouds, which is kind of a neat thing to do. Now here's the remarkable thing. He not only on freedom of information, like any other good story, let's get at the facts. That's what reporters are supposed to do. He also, Dr. Richard Haynes, retired NASA scientist, who has interviewed more than 1,000 pilots about their UFO sightings. And is very active with NARCAP, the National Advisory, National Aviation Reporting Center for Anomalous Phenomena. So pilots can report their sightings without fear of being ridiculed, publicized, etc. They have several thousand sighting reports. Now, Dick's final report is due to come out within the next couple of weeks, I'm told. Here's the thing. That article got more hits on the Chicago Tribune website than any other article they've ever published about anything, more than a miss. And it led the list for 4 days, which never happens. He got calls for interviews from all over the world. It turns out he's a transportation editor, incidentally, which somehow seems appropriate. He wrote a follow-up article that nobody expected that kind of reaction. Television stations, radio, the editor of the newspaper thought, you know, maybe we've underestimated the public interest in this. And I've often said, what would it take to break the lid off the cosmic Watergate? Somebody spending the same amount of effort you posted on the political Watergate. Woodward and Bernstein, yeah? They had a lot of backup on the money, you know, all this sort of stuff. It's hard to do it. But maybe we'll get the benefit of the My Lai syndrome. You remember My Lai? The massacre in Vietnam? Their benefit, of course. Where one guy pushed and pushed and pushed, got nowhere, and then Seymour Hersh, the New York Times, picked up on the story, went all over the country, and suddenly 20 other witnesses came out. And they had trials, Captain Medina, Lieutenant Calley, and so forth. So once it gets past the push point, in other words, it's very hard to put a lid on it. So this may encourage more media people to do what they should have been doing all along, once they get over the fact that they have to admit that they ignored the biggest story of the millennium. So, thank you very much for listening. It's tomorrow night at the 92nd Street YMHA, 7 or 7:30, I don't know which. I don't know what they're charging, but thank you very much.